This time last year, our family was walking through what we hope will be the darkest season of our lives. And it was around that time that I became aware of this interview between a well-known a reporter and a well-known talk show host, two very unlikely characters that would feed me some truth. And they were discussing the suffering that both of them had experienced in the past over the sudden deaths of their fathers. And the reporter had actually just also suffered the death of his mother. And he's asking the talk show host, he's saying to him, I read in an interview where you once said that you have learned to love the thing that you wished most never happened. And then the reporter paused and through tears asked the talk show host, do you really believe that? And the talk show host paused and through bated breath said, yeah, I do. I have to. And he went on very eloquently to describe that while he wished these things that are hard in his life had never happened, the good gifts that they had produced as a result of them happening have led him to a point where he had to learn to love the thing he wished most never happened. On some level, we are all in the room tonight because there are things in which we wish they most never happened. That is a unifying theme that brings us together here tonight. Last year around this time, many of you know, we were suffering through a sudden onset reaction that our youngest daughter had experienced that ultimately landed her in the ICU for several weeks. Out of the blue, unexpected, our lives were completely flipped upside down. It actually began to feel like we were living somebody else's story. These are the stories that you hear shared on Facebook of families that you don't really know, but they're never actually your family. And so they are your family. And it feels like you're living an out-of-body experience. It ultimately landed her in a very specialized hospital that required 24-hour round-the-clock care and highly guarded protection for anyone who went into her room. And I remember vividly this moment where we're having the morning meeting with her doctors, and it was not long after, while I wasn't there, in the middle of the night, they had pulled my wife out of her room, who never left her side the entire time, and began to very gently and lovingly explain to her that it was highly likely that our daughter wouldn't make it through the night. And it's a scene out of a movie that is somebody else's story, but it's never ours. And she crashes to the floor and just wails and screams. And on one hand, I'm glad I wasn't there that night, but on the other hand, I should have been there that night. And so as we navigated through this journey and we watched as our daughter's body was literally destroying itself, we made the decision that no one was allowed to see her in this condition other than her sisters. And it was very fascinating to watch the different reactions and responses of each sister. One wears the emotion on her sleeves. One wants to know what all the doctors are doing and second guess all of the decisions they're making, right? And the other just couldn't bear to go in for a couple of weeks because she just knew she couldn't wrap her mind around what she was seeing. In one of the most horrific seasons of our life, we began to discover that this, unfortunately, was becoming one of those moments that we wish never happened, and we're going to have to learn how to love it somehow, some way, because somehow, some way, even if there will be good gifts that we receive as a result, because that's just what God does. And sharing very closely with staff at the time as we were navigating through this, I vividly remember a conversation actually with one of our staff members about James chapter 1, where it says, consider it pure joy. Why? Because there will be good gifts as a result, as you learn to love the suffering that you are actually enduring. And we were commiserating on the fact that nobody actually ever really wants to understand what this verse means. Right? We also don't want to understand what it means when it says, while our outward bodies waste away, our inward souls groan for, right? But I'll take that over this any day. Or in Romans chapter 5, where it says that we can rejoice in our sufferings. Why? Because there are good gifts to be had. On some level and in some capacity, through varying circumstances and different contexts, we're all brought into this room literally from around the world because we are increasingly learning to become the kind of people who are grateful for the things that we wish never happened. Because in God's mercy and in God's kindness, he has brought about good gifts through them that we otherwise would have never been able to hold and savor and be beheld by. A few good gifts that we have experienced over the course of the last year through the suffering of our daughter and the tragedy of our family is, number one, that a miracle occurred and she came home. Yeah. To the best of our ability, we were sharing our journey for others to be involved with through prayer and support. And I came to Summit last year, 2 days after she came home. And 2,000 something people asked me, why are you here? But we're glad you're here. And part of the reason why I needed to be here is because so many of you participated in her miracle. And I needed to be here so that you could know that. One of the good gifts that God has given us as a result of something that we wish never happened is the blessing of understanding what it means to be a part of a community like this. And that our girl needed a miracle, and you helped provide that. This is a girl that was brought into our family through foster care and adoption, and not surprisingly, as she has grown, has increasingly struggled to find where is my place and who do I belong to and where do I fit and how do I make sense of my story? And as many of you can attest to, that's a struggle, a very real one and an understandable one. Do I really fit in this family as much as maybe some of the others do and the sisters do? Do you really love me as much as you love them? And then tragedy strikes, and she experiences the love of a community and the love of a mom and a dad and sisters in very real, tangible ways, to such an extent that for the last year, we have not once heard any murmuring of, you are not my real family. I wish I was never adopted. That has seemingly gone. And we're grateful for that gift. Our home is a difficult home at times, as many of you can relate to. And there's disruption and there's chaos, and it's beautiful and it's sometimes not beautiful. And we begin to wonder, what did we get ourselves into? And has this really all been worth it? Have we created more problems than perhaps we've solved? And the impact on our family, and a beautiful gift that has come out of this journey is the forging fire that this tragedy brought our family around in such a way that our family will never be the same. We even had one of our girls come to us and say, I know this sounds strange, but it almost feels like this happened to her at just the right time, right when our family needed it the most. What an odd but beautiful statement. We're grateful for the legacy of the relationship that she will now have with her sisters because she saw them fight for her, and there is now no more question whether or not you are loved and belong here. And then finally, we are just grateful for the gift of watching her smile today. I got a text right before I came up here of a video that was of her and her friends having just won their 7th grade volleyball game, jumping up and down, joyful. And if you've ever watched 7th grade volleyball, there's not much to jump up and down about. There's been many contexts in which we've watched her live and breathe and have life just restored in her body. And we'll be in public at the restaurant or the school or on the sidelines of the volleyball court, just in tears because of the miracle that we're seeing play out in front of us. We are a people that are increasingly learning to become the kind of people who are grateful for the things that we wish most never happened. Because through them, God has really beautiful, powerful gifts that we otherwise would have wholly missed out on. And for that, he is good and he is faithful. Thank you.